Welcome back. Got these carbies all cleaned up now, ready for final assembly. So I did spend a bit of time with carby cleaner and compressed air and some wire just to clean out all the air and fuel tracks. So you want to make sure you do that to avoid any problems once you get it running. Also bought a 6 Sigma jet kit and some new bowl gaskets. The jet kit has a number of mods, so one of them is on the main needle jet. You can see here this is the stop position where the clips in the middle on the third groove. So what you want to do is move that down one, which what it does is lifts up that needle by about 1 millimeter. So that should help it run a little bit richer. So just putting that clip in to the suggested position, and there will be a bit of tuning later once I get it running, but I'm just doing the easy stuff first. There are a couple of other mods with this kit where they talk about trimming the diaphragm spring and drilling extra holes and things like that, so I don't want to do any of that just yet because they're not reversible. So putting the needle jet in, put it into the piston. It does sit on a spring, so it should move up and down a little bit. Once that's positioned, you want to put the plate on top. The plate has 3 holes in it, 2 for the bolts and 1 that lines up with the air passage. So you want to make sure the plate isn't upside down because it won't line that hole up properly. Do the screws up and you pretty much duplicate that process for all 4 of the carbies. So I'm just going to show you the build on one of the carbies. So this is number 3 and they're basically all the same. The only difference is with the jet kit, the main jets are bigger on pistons 2 and 3. This is the pilot jet. You can see the new one at the top. It's got an extra hole in it to allow a bit more fuel. They're the same in all 4 carbies, but as I said, the main jets, I think standard is about 97 and the 2 outer jets are about 112 and the 2 inners are about 115. So this is the jet pipe. Drop this in. I use a set of long nose pliers just to help locate that. It's just a nice push fit. Once that's in, the main jet screws into it on the other end with the washer on it, and that's what holds that into position. So this is the main jet going in now. Do this up, and once you get to this point, the pilot jet's in, the main jet's in. You want to do the inlet fuel strainer and the float valve, which is here. Make sure the seat's not damaged. It goes into that sleeve, not that way, with the spring facing up like this. There's an O-ring seal. Push that into the housing, and then there's just one small bolt and clamp that holds that into position, which I'm just putting on here now. Once you get this far, you need to then get the float, and the float is positioned so it fits underneath that little tab, which you'll see in a moment, and then push the pin in. I do knock this in a bit later. One of the ends of that pin on the head end is slightly bigger to hold it in play. What you want to do is use a vernier, or some people use a ruler, and you want to measure from the bottom of the gasket face to the top of the float in the position where I've got it here, where it just touches, and it needs to be around 21.4 mil, and the book says plus or minus 1 mil. So this is just over 19 mil. I need it to be a bit more than that, so I want to raise the float. So to do that, you just bend this tab, which sits on top of the float needle, and adjust that. Bend the tab as I am if you want to raise the float, and bend it the other way if you want to lower it. So I do this a couple of times. I'm now measuring on the other side. Both sides should measure the same. Getting close to 20 mil now. It's not quite as much as what I want, so just bending it a bit more and doing a final check. So once I check it a third time, I am pretty close to where I want, and just having a look here, we're at nearly 21 mil. So I'm going to leave it at that and make all 4 the same. So just knocking that pin in, putting new float gaskets in. A couple were cracked, so I don't want any problems, so I've put some new gaskets. These are from Suzuki, but I'm sure there's some aftermarket ones around. You don't need any gasket gear on these, so just position this and lower the bowl on. And the other thing I did is I replaced all the Phillips head screws with socket head bolts, which you can see here, stainless steel. I think they're much better to use than Phillips head screws. They're easier to get off and they look better as well. So just tension them up. They don't need to be overly tight. Fuel shouldn't get to that level anyway. This is just the air jet. So this is the stock one. In the jet kit you don't change that, so just tension it up. Once I got to this point, I use a bit of inox as a lubricant on the main piston, and there's the tin. Bit of lubricant, lower the piston in, making sure that you line that tab up on the diaphragm. Just seat the diaphragm, and then once you've done that, put the diaphragm spring in. That spring is one of the mods they claim you can trim back, which I may look at once I get the engine running, and that should improve throttle response. But I just want to get this running first before I go too crazy with mods that I can't undo. So there's the socket head bolts again, and putting them all round. Once I've done that, just make sure the piston moves up and down freely before putting the choke assembly in. So there's a little seal on the bottom of that choke. You just want to make sure that's not too hard or cracked. Screw it in. It's a 12mm socket or ring spanner, and then once it's tightened up, just lift it up and down to make sure that it moves freely. Once you got the choke in, the next thing is to put the pilot screw in, and before you do that, there's a tiny O-ring which you can see here. You drop that in and then position it properly that it's seated, and then once that's seated, there's also a small washer that fits on top of that O-ring, which it's hard to see, but I have actually got it in position there. After that, I put a bit of Vaseline on the thread. Don't want this thread binding up again. Put the spring on and then lower it into the position. So this pilot screw, you just screw it all the way in until you can feel it seat. The seat is tiny, so don't over tighten it, you'll just snap it off. Once it seats, which is in a moment, I then back it off 2 turns as a starting point for tuning. So there's half, 1, 1.5, 2 turns. I'll do the same with all 4 Carbys. So here they are here. Same process. They're ready to be put back together. So first thing I do is I get Carbys number 3 and 4. Put the connectors in. So the bottom one's a fuel connector, the top one's a fuel overflow. Clip them together. Then I'll do the same on number 1 and 2, and they have the same fittings. And once they're in, there's one main connector in between the 2 center Carbys. It's a T-piece for the fuel inlet, which I'm just putting in now. So once they're in, it's a matter of putting the brackets back on. I put both brackets on loosely first just to make sure they're all in the right position. So one bracket on the bottom as we're doing here, one at the top. Put all the screws in again, socket head bolts for me. Once they're all in, do them up properly, and these Carbys are basically done now. They've come up really good, so everything has gone together well, and it's looking really good. There are a couple of needle valves, pilot screws there that you can see are damaged. I've only got them in loosely because I need to buy some new ones still. They're on order. Once I got to this point, what I did is I needed to undo 2 of the screws on this cap here for number 3, and that's where the idle adjustment lever goes. So just putting that on. Once it's on, I just screw the seat down just until it almost touches on the throttle assembly, and again that's an adjustment I'll do once it's up and running. So that's looking good. Then the next stage is putting the choke together. The choke's pretty simple. There's 4 little forks that sit on a shaft. That shaft I've painted up. It's got dimples in it, so you can't really get it wrong. So just as you slide the shaft in, position the forks, and do that for all 4 Carbys. And once the shaft's all the way in, do each of the Phillips head screws They're the only Phillips head I left because they were just the right length that they need to be. Those ones there actually are quite easy to do up and undo, so I left them. But do them up, you can't get them wrong because they sit in that dimple, as I said. Once you get to this point, there's no screw in the end. You can see it moves freely and reseats. Put a washer behind there. Put the holding bolt in the front, and then that bolt there gets done up fully. It has a little spring behind it, and what that does is creates a bit of tension so that when you apply the choke, it'll hold it in a particular position. So you can see here, it now holds it wherever I desire. So that's the choke assembly done, and it's come up really good. I did buy some new air cleaners. You can get cheap ones from eBay, from China, and these ones are a bit more expensive. So these are about $20 each. Much better quality than some I've seen. So just put all four on. As I said, I've got a couple needle valves still on order, but these Carbys are all done. Very happy with them. The engine's looking great, and now I've got to get on to making the frame of this mower. So lots to go, but stay tuned.